Okay, welcome to part two. We're going to talk about exhaust valves now. We're going to start out with an exhaust valve that has excessive lash. So we all know when a valve has excessive lash that it will open later and close earlier. So we look at right here, as that one is there, it's loose. And we know that a loose valve has less overlap. So nonetheless, we know that as we look at our vents on the bottom, a loose valve, our exhaust will open later. The arrow going toward the retard side, it will be later, and the exhaust valve, the closing will happen sooner. That will go toward the advanced arrow. So let's take a look at it in action. We'll get to the scope, and we are got the same 4 channels up. We got the transducer, the 2 WPSs in cylinder 1, which has the loose exhaust valve, another WPS in 3, which has normal valves, a piezo delta sensor on the intake, and a FLS in the tailpipe. So I'm gonna crank it about, let me start the buffer, and we'll crank it about 10 seconds. Okay, let's stop the scope and analyze. Okay. Wow, what do we got here? Let's look at a fire cycle. This is 720 degrees. We'll use cylinder 1. That's the one that has the loose exhaust valve. Look at that high spike there. Let's measure that. That is because the exhaust valve closed so early, it created pressure in the cylinder, and it elevated before the intake valve would open and relieve that. Anyway, our overlap looks affected. That's this guy here. That looks a bit of an anomaly. That's our overlap section on cylinder 1. We know that excessive lash will decrease overlap in this case, and we can see it right here. This is different. This overlap is different than the other 3 here. The fact that the exhaust valve is loose, that there's excessive lash, it will actually cause it to open later. Let's get some vertical zoom on the blue guy and kind of analyze that a little better, a little more granularity. Right here, let's get a cursor to see when that guy popped off his seat. And that, my friends, is somewhat late compared to normal. How many degrees is that? That's way late. That's 16 degrees before bottom dead center. That is way, way late. It is late on opening, and it is early on closing. Very emblematic of a loose exhaust valve. You can see the pressure here. The vacuum pulls, let's analyze them. I see a high pull right here, and an overshoot here. One thing I want to mention, it's my fault. These delta sensors, this FLS sensor in the tailpipe and the one in the intake have a characteristics called a ricochet effect. They overshoot. If they go high initially, they go just as high on the rebound. I don't know if I explained that. You kind of get an idea when you see them high here. We're high here, and the reason we're high here is that there was a lot of pressure in the cylinder when the intake valve opened, because the fact that the exhaust valve early closing created the pressure. That would explain our elevated peak right here. We're higher than normal. That's definitely an anomaly. Okay, that is a direct result of the exhaust valve closing early. The fact that it goes high here, it goes long here. It ricochets off, and then it gets back to normal. I just wanted to point that out. That is very much characteristics of the Delta piezo style sensors, like the FLS and the one I have in the intake also. So just bear that in mind. That's kind of an overshoot. Anyway, we see that. And how are our compression towers? Let's look at those. We'll make comparisons between the normal cylinder and the cylinder with excessive exhaust lash. Okay, we're about 206 on the cylinder with the lash, and on the cylinder with good valves we are about 192. So we got a little bit of a high pressure there, possibly due to a scavenging effect which would give the cylinder a head start and make the pressure escalate. That's the only thing I could think of. Please chime in on that. And also notice our overlap section here is definitely anomaly as a direct result of our exhaust valve closing early, which is because of the excessive lash. Okay, I will create a situation now. We're going to go back and try to get this done. I will go the opposite direction. I will create an exhaust valve that is too tight, and we'll see the effects of that. Okay. Okay, we are at top dead center on one with very loose exhaust valves. We will make them very tight. Take a look at how that affects this is our final capture for this scenario. Okay, now we got tight valves on the exhaust. We're still rolling. Let's take a look at this. This is the final one, and analyze it. We're going to crank about 10 seconds. We've got the 4 channels hooked up. Here we go. Okay, I'll stop the scope. I can already see something odd on the black channel. That is most definitely odd. Okay, there's a fire cycle, and we can see that the exhaust valve is tight. That means it opened early. And let's kind of look at expansion pockets first. Let's kind of take one guy at a time. Take the blue guy, we'll stretch it and look at the expansion pocket. That is blue. And how deep did that go? Okay, that only went to negative 1.8. Okay, it opened early, so it didn't get into a chance to get into such a deep vacuum as the red guy. Right off the bat, I can look at red and see that she's probably going to be a lot deeper. Red is -5, so it's a big difference. The fact that the exhaust valve came off its seat earlier, that piston was still going down and it couldn't get into a vacuum because it popped off. It opened up and relieved the vacuum sooner. Hence, a less of a vacuum on blue than there is on red. And the other characteristics, the vacuum is acting a little strange, I would say. If you think about how would a tight exhaust valve affect an intake pull, it looks like as the intake valve is coming down, a tight exhaust valve would open earlier and close later. I'm surprised this pull is not weaker. Just from the research I've done, I don't want to, BS you or give you any snuff jobs, and the textbook would say that would be shorter right here, because as the intake valve opens, the exhaust pressure, the fact that the exhaust is still open would affect this pull and weaken it, but it doesn't look like it's doing that. So anyway, I just thought I'd point that out. The anomaly on the transducer in the tailpipe is very, very obvious. You can definitely see that right there. It doesn't have the characteristics of the other three. The exhaust valve opens early. It comes off its seat and comes up here. Here's the pull for the exhaust valve. It is less than the other ones, but nonetheless, you can definitely see a difference. So anyway, this is the a situation where valve lash has a profound effect on in-cylinder transducers, vacuum pulls, and tailpipe measurements. Anyway, signing off here. This is a two-parter, and thanks for watching, and be well. Take care.